When Archbishop Thomas Wensky of the USCCB Committee on Migration joined us recently, I told you we plan to cover all sides of this immigration issue. Indeed, we've been doing it since this show began. This week, Pope Francis waded into the debate with a very pointed letter warning Americans' bishops that President Trump's immigration and border initiatives are a problem. For the administration's perspective on immigration law enforcement, we are joined now by former ICE director and current Trump border czar, Tom Homan. Tom, thanks for being with us. I know you're in New York, and I want to get to that in a moment. I've got to share the big news of the week, Pope Francis's letter to the bishops of the U.S. regarding the president's immigration initiatives. I want to get your reaction. This is what he had to say. I'll pull a bit of it. I have followed closely the major crisis that is taking place in the United States with the initiation of a program of mass deportations. The rightly formed conscience cannot fail to make a critical judgment and express its disagreement with any measure that tactically or explicitly identifies the illegal status of some migrants with criminality. At the same time, one must recognize the right of a nation to defend itself and keep communities safe. That said, the act of deporting people who in many cases have left their own lands for reasons of extreme poverty or insecurity, exploitation, persecution, or serious deterioration of the environment damages the dignity of many men and women and their entire families and places them in a state of particular vulnerability and defensiveness. That was the Pope's letter of February 10th. The Pope is very concerned, Tom, about the dignity of the immigrant regardless of status. Are you and the President respecting the dignity of these deportees?
We absolutely are. And what the Pope needs to understand is that President Trump and I have been very clear that our prioritization right now are public safety threats and national security threats. These are people illegally in the United States that create horrendous crimes, commit horrendous crimes in the United States. We've seen numerous young women raped, murdered, burned alive. And these people aren't supposed to be number one, and they're public safety threat. We're trying to protect the community. And as far as border enforcement, illegal immigration is down 90%. What does that mean when it's down 90%, Raymond? When 90% less people are coming, how many women aren't being raped by the cartels? Because studies have been done that 31% of women that make that journey through the cartels get sexually assaulted. So when President Trump has illegal immigration on 90%, how many women aren't being sexually assaulted? How many children aren't dying crossing the river? How many women and children aren't sex trafficked in this country? How many Americans aren't dying from fentanyl poisonings? President Trump's policies save lives. We have a right to have a secure border. We have the right to our sovereignty, just like the Vatican has a wall around them. We have a right to protect American citizens. We have a right to reduce illegal alien crime in this country, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Tom Homan, when you read that about, focused on the dignity of the immigrant, illegal or otherwise, did you have any thoughts about what about the dignity of our own citizens and their protection and welfare and well-being?
And it's exactly true. We're trying to protect American citizens' lives. We're trying to protect their prosperity. But look, I respect. I'm not anti-immigrant. This country is built on immigrants. We're all immigrants. My family came here and a long time ago. This isn't about attacking immigrants, but it's about illegal immigration. What we need to understand. People think illegal immigration is a victimless crime, right? That people just come here for a better life, and I get that. But what's happening is we got millions of people coming to our borders making an asylum claim. They're claiming they're escaping fear and persecution from their home government because of race, religion, and political affiliation. That's simply not true. If you look at immigration court data over the last 10 years, nearly 9 out of 10 people that claim asylum at our border are making a false asylum claim. They don't claim they don't get an asylum claim. The courts don't award them a claim, and they get already deported. But meanwhile, while the millions of people making these false claims to asylum, there are, like you said a few minutes ago, there are millions of people in this world. I won't say millions, hundreds of thousands of people in this world that really do need our protection, that really are escaping fear and persecution from their home government, and they're sitting in the back seat where all these fraudulent asylum claims. So we're trying to do the right thing for the Americans. We're trying to do the right thing for the immigrants. What we've done, like I'll say it again, under Joe Biden with open borders, we had over 4,000 migrants have died crossing the border. When President Trump has it down 90%, how many lives are we saving? Not only Americans dying from fentanyl, but the migrants making that dangerous journey. President Trump saves lives with his policies.
Tom, as a Catholic, what was your reaction when you read that papal letter? I mean, he's basically equating illegal immigrants here with the Holy Family fleeing Herod.
Look, I'm a lifelong Catholic. I grew up in a strong Catholic household. I was baptized a Catholic, had my first communion a Catholic, had my confirmation, and I love the Catholic Church. But I think the Pope has lost his way a little bit. The Catholic Church has problems. Please fix the Catholic Church. I love the Catholic Church. Well, he needs to fix the Catholic Church and concentrate on his problems and leave the border problems to us. I mean, stay in his lane, I stay in my lane. But as a lifelong Catholic, please fix the church. I mean, we've lost a lot of membership. We lost a lot of the flock, and going to Mass isn't the same anymore. So, concentrate on the Catholic Church, and let's get back to the Catholic Church I grew up in, where you actually did call out abortion. You didn't say that a president or someone in Congress is a good Catholic even though they support abortion. I mean, let's get back to the base of what the Catholic Church is. I love that Catholic Church. The Catholic Church today, I'm disappointed in, and I hope he listens to us all, because it needs to get fixed. It needs to be addressed.
Tom, we recently had Archbishop Thomas Wenski, on. He's a member of that the Bishop's Committee on Migration. He was on the show a couple of weeks ago. He told me that the USCCB and these other Catholic NGOs, that they only settle refugees who are not immigrants in his estimation, but they're vetted by the government. Is that true in your experience? Are these Catholic NGOs only settling refugees?
No, they're not. No, they're not. And look, I know for a fact that Catholic Social Service, all these NGOs made billions of dollars, and to bring people in this country that they know aren't supposed to be here, that aren't true asylum seekers. I just gave you a stat: 9 out of 10 of these people have no asylum claim. They're coming for a better life, a job, and I get that. But when you overwhelm the border, here's what Catholic Charities and the rest of them need to understand: while you help this process, which you are doing. When you make the process easier for illegal aliens coming across the border, and you're going to give them housing, give them food, and help them, and give them money and all this other stuff, you are feeding a monster that kills thousands of people every year. You need to understand what you call illegal immigration, these people coming across the border. The problem is when you overwhelm the border patrol, millions of people coming in. And up to 70% of agents were pulled off the line. Some sectors, 100% of agents were pulled off the line to make sandwiches, change diapers, and do that humanitarian mission that they have to do, because we got to take care of these people. While you're overwhelming the border patrol doing this humanitarian crisis, the majority of border patrols pulled off the border, off their Homeland Security mission, and that's when the fentanyl comes across that killed 250,000 Americans. That's when the sex trafficking increased 600%. That's when people from terrorist country come across the border. That's when the sex trafficking, all this other bad stuff happened because you overwhelmed the border patrol. So illegal migration, you think it's innocent? It is not. Illegal migration has a whole ugly underbelly. I've stood in back to a trailer with 19 dead people at my feet, including a 5-year-old little boy that suffocated to death. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 that were raped by multiple men in the cartel. Illegal migration is not a victimless crime, and everybody should understand that. So rather than feeding this beast, fight against it and ask for a secure border. Secure border saves lives. When President Trump has immigration, those he has right now, we're saving hundreds of lives every day. How many children aren't drowning in the river? How many women aren't being sexually assaulted by the cartels? How many women and children aren't being sex trafficked in this country? Again, we're saving lives. And what they've done on the last 4 years is feed the beast and make it easier for people to cross the border, because people knew, I cross the border, I'll get a free airline ticket to sit in my choice, I'll get a free place to stay, I'll get 3 meals a day, I get free medical care.
Yeah. And you might even get money for a startup and a car. I mean, we're now learning HHS was giving billions of dollars away, hundreds of billions of dollars. And again, what people don't understand, if you're worried about human dignity, Tom, you and I have been at that border. Catholic Charities and these NGOs in many cases are the final handoff for the cartels. And when you look at these church-affiliated NGOs, Catholic Charities, Catholic Relief Services, these local migration and refugee offices, they've received billions of dollars, Tom. in federal funds over the last few years to move migrants into the mainland. How much of this reaction that we're seeing from the Vatican and from others is about the freezing of those federal funds, do you think?
I think, look, they made billions of dollars, and I can tell you right now it's going to be investigated how all this money was spent. Because I've gotten reports that there has been U.S. citizens show up at a Catholic Charities a place, and they were turned down when they asked for help because they weren't getting paid for it. So, you know, all this stuff's going to be under investigation. How these billions of dollars got funneled to groups that helped, that I won't say complicit, but involved in the trafficking of women and children across this country, working in they may not intentionally did it, but they're helping the cartels create this big machine of trafficking to the United States, alien smuggling, which again overwhelms the border to all this other things happen. I'm not going to say they're complicit. They know exactly how deep this goes, but they certainly didn't ask questions. They certainly didn't push back on what they knew was a smuggling cycle. And what they did when they finally did release them, whether they know it or not, they released them to traffickers who's going to force these people into labor, both forced labor and forced sex trafficking. So when they went in with hands out, eyes shut, and that's not acceptable to me as a Catholic. It's not acceptable. They need to be held accountable, and they will be held accountable because there's going to be investigations how this all happened.
Yeah. Tom, Archbishop Joseph Naumann of Kansas City, Kansas, wrote a recent column mentioning the obligation of the government to protect its citizens. And he wrote this before the Pope's letter, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, "It is inconceivable that our previous administration either did not know or care about the location of the circumstances of approximately 300,000 children and youth who entered the United States during the past 4 years. We do not know how many of them have become victims of human trafficking, gangs, and drug dealers. This is a national disgrace. I salute President Trump and his administration for making it a priority to find these lost children and youth." That's Archbishop Joseph Naumann. Give me your thoughts on that column and tell me what you found, Tom. You've been on site of these recent ICE raids vis-a-vis the trafficking of children and or adults. What have you seen in Chicago, in New York, when you're there with the agents?
Well, first of all, I agree with this columnist. He's exactly right. Under the last administration, over 500,000 children were separated from their families, put in the hands of criminal cartels, to enter this country illegally. And who knows what happened to them during that journey. I can tell you many of them were sexually assaulted. I know because I've done this for 3.5 decades. I know how these groups operate. And when we go to these cities, Chicago, New York, and these other cities, well, look, we've already found children working in meat packing plants and a midnight shift, cleaning up entrails of the slaughter that day and not getting paid. We've seen adult males who were the sponsor of a dozen young girls. Under CBP One app, we found people that were sponsored by a male. There's 1,600 people sponsored by one person, and that person's been dead for several years. So a lot of these people have been sex trafficked and forced labor trafficked in this country, and we're already finding them. And President Trump committed that he's going to find these over 300,000 missing children. President Trump gave me 3 things to do: secure the border, run a deportation operation, and find these children. So we're working on that now to try to, not every one of these children are in a bad way. Some are going to be, we'll find them with family. But many of these children, after 3.5 decades of doing trafficking investigations, many of these children we're going to find in pornographic movies. We're going to find they're in sex slavery. We're going to find they're in forced labor. And President Trump's committed to finding them because this administration not only released them to unvetted sponsors that they didn't fingerprint, didn't do background checks, they're not even looking for them. So it's taking the Trump administration, day one, he told me, find these children. That's what we're working on now, to rescue these children.
That's astounding. And Tom, I just read this story today that ICE in Boston arrested this Guatemalan illegal alien. He's charged with multiple counts of aggravated and forcible child rape in Massachusetts. What about the dignity of that child, Tom? I mean, I think that's getting lost in all of this. We just don't talk about these victims.
No, one thing I talk about, and I hate talking about it because sometimes I get emotional about it, but I'm getting better at it. There was a time where I got on my knees to look eye to eye with a 9-year-old little girl who was raped multiple times by members of the cartel who demanded that as part of their crossing, her family. That little girl, when I looked in her eyes, everything innocent and pure, you just tell it's ripped from her. She's never going to be the same. She obviously lost faith in humanity. Her life will never be the same. That little girl is going to suffer now until the day she dies, because what happened to her is it's such a tragedy. And when you look at a little girl's eyes, 9 years old, you should be happy. She should be the happiest little thing in the world, right? She's a child. But she wasn't. She was attacked by grown men crawling on her, taking anything innocent and pure from her, and that changed me forever. I mean, and I've talked to a lot of victims of sex trafficking, and they're all bad stories. And there's a lot of them in this country now. The other thing we need to deal with is that this country is a customer for sex trafficking. We need to deal with the ones who are buying this service, but at the same time, let's stop feeding that service through open borders. Let's shut it down and save some lives.
Yeah. Tell me about these leaks of the ICE raids that you've been conducting across the country. I mean, these are aliens with criminal records that you're extraditing and trying to locate. There are reports that they were coming from inside the FBI, the leaks. And I know the new AG is promising prosecution, rather. How close are you to identifying those parties responsible?
Well, I'm leaving that up. As far as that leak, I'm leaving that up to the Attorney General's office, because they have their own internal affairs, separate from what DHS has. As far as the first leak, we know who that is now. That's being dealt with severely. And there is information that tends to lead. Maybe it's the FBI leaked the second one. But I want to say this. We'll find out who it is, and he'll be dealt with harshly, and he'll be prosecuted. Not only lose his job and lose his pension, be prosecuted. But I want to make clear this. There are thousands of FBI special agents on the street with us every day in New York, Chicago, and across the country that are doing the right thing. They put a badge on their chest. They wear that gun on their hip. They put a Kevlar vest. They're doing the dangerous job and doing the right thing. And it's just a shame you got one or two out there that want to do something stupid and put officers at risk. When you leak an operation, it's just that if they think, oh, this is for political reason, I don't want to arrest illegal aliens, whatever his reasoning is, but when you leak an operation, we go out there, now the bad guy knows we're coming. It's only a matter of time for officers are ambushed by someone that just don't care about life. So they need to understand, not only you're messing up the operation, you're putting officers at greater risk of harm. So they'll be dealt with hard, and maybe we need to make an example of somebody, but that needs to end. This isn't a game. Again, we're looking for the worst of the worst. And the worst thing you can do, is tell them we're coming. Here we come. We're coming tomorrow. It's ridiculous, and we're dealing with it. The Attorney General is on this. Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, she's promising penalties on this, serious criminal penalties. So as we find out more, we're going to hold people accountable.
Early this year, Tom, and we discussed this a little bit, the Vatican, without much fanfare, increased its penalties for people who dare to enter the sovereign Vatican territory illegally. Criminal prosecution with fines up to $25,000, prison sentences up to 4 years, more if the incursions involve violence, and anyone actually convicted of an illegal incursion could be barred from legal reentry for up to 15 years. Tom Homan, do those sound like reasonable protections for a sovereign nation? And if you were the Vatican border czar, what else would you suggest?
Well, first of all, now you just told me that their consequences are more severe than ours. When you enter our country illegally here, it's a misdemeanor. So, for him, judging how we protect our sovereignty, at one point the Pope said we shouldn't build a wall, and he's got a wall around the Vatican, and his penalties are worse than ours. So I don't know how he gets off judging us. I know one time it says, well, we got a wall, but we got gates. People can still come in. Well, we got gates, too. They're called a port of entry. That's where people come in legally. So it's, wow. Maybe I'll take a page out of his book and take his penalties, because they're more extreme than our penalties. Look, we're not. I'm going to say it again. Secure borders just isn't about saving lives, but protect our national security. We need to know who's coming in, where they're coming in, why they're coming in, and where they're coming from. We need to know that to protect our national security.
Tom, the president also reinstated his Remain in Mexico policy, which he established in the first term. He officially designated those cartels in Mexico that you've seen up close as terrorist organizations. Tell the audience what that classification of the cartels does and how important that is to your work.
Well, I push for that classification. I've been pushing that for years because the criminal cartels in Mexico have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined, right?
Wow.
So, and they act like a terrorist organization. They kill people. They kill journalists. They kill politicians. They kill judges. They kill thousands in the media. And they terrorize government officials. A lot of government officials in Mexico is corrupt. But some of them don't want to be corrupt. But when you have a cartel member coming up and say, you know what, you're going to turn a blind eye to what I'm about to do, I'm going to kill you and your family. So, I think Mexico would love it if the United States could wipe the cartels off the face of the earth with their help. So it's important because it opens up all these other toolboxes we can use to attack the cartels. And not just attack them in Mexico, but attack them worldwide. Some of these cartels, the Jalisco cartel, I think they're in 43 countries around the globe now. And not only they moving dope into our country, or drugs in our country, now they have a foothold in the major cities here. So they used to be just about smuggling the product into the United States to be sold in our neighborhoods. Now they actually have established footholds in our major cities. Now they're taking over the distribution network in the United States. We need to take them out. They need to be dealt with. And by doing so, you're saving the country of Mexico. I'm sure that life would be much better in Mexico without the cartel running operations down there, threatening their military, their police officers, and their politicians. Thousands of people die every year in Mexico at the hands of criminal cartels. I would think they would be blessed by having President Trump take those cartels out of business because life in Mexico would be so much better.
Yep. One of the most controversial orders is the president ended birthright citizenship, what used to be called anchor babies, automatic U.S. citizenship for a child born in the U.S. A federal judge temporarily blocked that presidential action, Tom. Is this fair, given the long-standing constitutional protection of the 14th Amendment, and does halting birthright citizenship attack human dignity in your estimation?
Well, look, I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I've read the 14th Amendment. I don't think it's clear that it's. I see people say, well, constitutionally they're U.S. citizens. Well, I don't see that. I think it's this question's been at us for decades. I think it's about time the Supreme Court weighs in on it. And is it constitutional or not? And does it really mean? Because they keep talking about a case of the Wong case, where I think it was Japanese nationals gave birth to someone here, and they classified them as U.S. citizen. But let's remember, those Japanese nationals, see the Japanese or Chinese, I don't quite remember because I'm taking myself back to the academy where I took immigration law. They were here they were illegally here. They were admitted here on a visa. So that's different being here, admitted by the U.S. government that have control over them and have as a child, rather than an illegal alien who have no control or no jurisdiction over because they're here illegally. We don't even know they're here. So I think it's a big difference. So I want the Supreme Court to address it. But I will tell you one thing. Birthright citizenship is a huge driver of illegal immigration. We got what we call birth tourism. The biggest offenders are China and Russia. They come over here and they're 8-9 months pregnant. They come here for one reason. They come here on visitor visa or student visa or some other visa to have a child. They have a child that's going to be a U.S. citizen. Now that child qualifies for all of our social benefits, and it's their foothold into this country. So not only do we have a birth tourism issue, you got an illegal migration issue. And let me just use one example. Under Barack Obama, Jay Johnson was the secretary. We had a lot of family units crossing the border illegally. Most of them, like I said, 90% lost their case. So we went looking for them to remove them. And I remember 42% of those family cases, the female mother was already pregnant or had a U.S. citizen child. So one of the first things they do, and people say, well, illegal aliens don't take social services. First of all, that's a lie, they do. But when you have a U.S. citizen child, it opens up all kinds of social services at taxpayer expense. So it is a driver of illegal migration. Again, overwhelms the border patrol, which causes all of these other bad things to happen. So I'm looking forward to the Supreme Court finally settling this issue. And whether it's, no, they're not, or yes, they are, let's answer the question and end the conversation once and for all.
Tom, Asian affairs expert Gordon Chang was on the show last week, and he warned of the security threats coming from the northern border with Canada. Given all the attention that we're paying to the southern border, what are you seeing up north, and is the administration spending sufficient time and attention on that border?
We are. I am. I've done a lot of work on the northern border. I've met with Canadian officials, a foreign minister, and the head of the RCMP, our Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I met with their borders are. I met with a lot of officials, talk about what more they can do to secure that northern border and what more we can do. So the northern border, people need to understand, after 9/11, a study was done, I think it was by GAO, a federal agency of the study, saying a terrorist threat entering the northern border is 10 times more likely than the southern border because we got all these resources on the southern border. So the bottom line is the northern border is under-resourced. We got very few agents out there. We need to build that up. We need to build up the technology, and we need to have a close relationship with Canada. One of the things we need Canada to do is tighten up their immigration rules. It's very easy to enter Canada from any other country, and a lot of the Pakistani, Indian, Turks, they get in the, which are special interest countries. There are some affiliation with terrorist groups. Get into Canada and make it easy walk across the northern border. Where I grew up in the Thousand Islands, you can come across the St. Lawrence River in 3 minutes and get lost within 1,000 islands. And so we need more border security on the northern border. We need more technology. We need a closer relationship with Canada. And we need Canada to step up. And which President Trump has, pressured them. And now they're putting more resources on their our northern border. So Canada's already stepping up. Yeah. We'll see if they finish the job. But I like the first steps. So I'm saying, and that all to the thanks of President Trump holding them accountable.
Good. You're meeting with the mayor of New York. You met with the mayor of New York today, and I see the background there. Are these migrant hotels all over the city, are those finally going to close? And where will those people go, Tom Homan?
Well, look, the federal government's going to stop funding these things as we fund these things more and more. Again, if you believe you can get in the United States, be released and get a free airline ticket and get a free hotel room, get 3 meals a day and free medical care, the whole world's going to come. So, we'll leave it up to, the way it used to be. Social service and these groups, private groups, they can certainly, fund some of this stuff for the U.S. government. We're going to be out of business of this because it's a magnet for more illegal immigration to come. If they think they're not going to be held to any standard, any rule, no consequences for entering this country illegally, which is a crime. Yeah,
and Tom, what's never reported is we displace American citizens from many of these government housing opportunities, even welfare programs. We displace them for these illegal migrants, much to their chagrin. They're really upset about it. I've interviewed some of them.
You're exactly right. Look, I went to Chicago and I met with the black community. I met with many black pastors who are saying, look, we got homeless U.S. citizens who pay taxes on the street, while people who are illegal are sitting in hotel rooms getting 3 meals a day and free medical care. We got homeless vets. Go to Washington. You've been to Washington, D.C., right near the Fox headquarters there. You see homeless people there at the train station. A lot of them homeless vets. I was in Phoenix, Arizona not long ago during the summer. We got homeless vets living in tents in 115-degree weather. And right down the street, I was there, right down the street, there's a hotel that these NGOs leased, putting illegal aliens there who have a shower, who have air conditioning, have 3 meals a day, have a toilet, for God's sakes, free medical care. And we got homeless vets down the street sleeping in a tent at 115 degrees. So you're exactly right, Raymond. U.S. citizens, our veterans have been displaced to care for people who aren't supposed to be here. Now, look, I'll say this.
We can't have that.
If there's a labor need for these people, then Congress needs to address that. But the answer isn't open the borders up, let's overwhelm the Border Patrol, and let's tell the whole world you can enter the country illegally, which is a crime. You get released and get a free hotel room, free airline ticket, free. You're telling the whole world it's okay to come here. We got to stop. We got to have consequences. We cannot take care of the whole world and leave our citizens out in the cold. We can't do it, especially like right now in New York City. I've been here for a couple hours. I see people sleeping with blankets.
Right, all over the city. This is in Midtown Manhattan. But again, and we should preface this by saying this is a country with the most generous immigration policy of any country in the world. I mean, and still our citizens are being abused and moved aside when they need care as well. I want to end with this, Tom. The newly appointed Archbishop of Detroit, Edward Weissenberger, once suggested when he was Bishop of Tucson back in 2018 that canonical penalties, the withholding of communion, be considered for Catholics who were involved in border enforcement practices that he considered morally wrong. Border Patrol agents and people like you who are in charge of policy, How do you as a Catholic process something like that? And how do you reconcile or see your work alongside your faith?
Look, I didn't know that. It angers me. I love the Catholic Church. I love being Catholic. We're saving lives every day. We are rescuing women and children that are sex trafficked. We are trying to secure the border to save lives. We're trying to shut down the cartels who sexually assault women. We're trying to stop sex trafficking of women and children. We want to find 300,000 missing children, many of them in sex slavery. We're trying to save lives, which a Catholic should do, and we should be proud of doing it. I thought, back in the day, the Catholic Church believed in the enforcement of law. And I would think that, the doctrine still says that. So, again, I'm disappointed. The Catholic Church needs to change, and our current Pope needs to, tackle that problem. And so, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. It's sad. It's sad where I grew up as a child, loving the Catholic Church. I remember going to Catholic Mass with my parents every Sunday, and we had 7 kids. We took 2 of the small pews. That was a Homan pew. And God help anybody who sat in that pew before we got there, because my dad would get angry. That's our pew. You go from that, where a whole family goes to Mass together, to having the Catholic Church attack people who enforce the law and save lives, just incredible.
Yeah, well, Tom, to my eye, it sounds like you are acting in the interest of the common good and trying to protect lives, and that is at the heart of the gospel and Catholic doctrine, last time I checked. Tom Homan, we'll leave it there. We'll check in with you in the days ahead. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, Raymond. I appreciate you.